Good morning. Welcome to Baking Bakers, where today we're going to make a yeast bread that's sort of an artisan rustic bread, and it's so easy you won't even believe it. So we're going to start with 1.5 cups of warm water between 105 and 110 degrees, and we're going to add to that 1 tablespoon of yeast, 1/2 teaspoon of sugar, because the yeast needs something to help it rise, and then we're just going to give that a quick stir to wet it and leave it set for a few minutes. Meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and put in a large bowl, we're going to put 3 cups of, I'm using bread flour. You can use all-purpose flour. I prefer to use bread flour when I'm making bread if I can, so you don't need to alter any of the ingredients if you're using regular flour. You're just going to go ahead and make it exactly like I'm doing it. So 3 cups of bread flour, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1 tablespoon of sugar, and I have 1 tablespoon of olive oil. Need to get a spoon. This bread does not require any kneading, and mixing up these ingredients takes about 2 minutes, and then we're going to leave it sit in the pan covered at room temperature or in a slightly warm place for 3 or 4 hours, and then we're going to transfer it to a Dutch oven, and we're going to bake it. So I'm going to stir these dry ingredients together so I don't have all the small ingredients in one little pocket. My yeast is starting to bubble, so that makes me happy. I know that it's active, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. Make sure I get all of the yeast in. And I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of, whoop, don't drop it, 1 tablespoon of olive oil. I'm going to mix this together. It's going to make a sticky, shaggy dough, which is exactly what we want. Get these bowls out of the way. I want to make sure it's incorporated. Now I've pre-washed my hands, and I'm just going to go in there with my hands and sort of shape it a little bit, giving it a couple of kneads just in the bowl. And then I'm going to cover it with saran wrap, and I'm going to leave it sit for 3 to 4 hours, and then we're going to come back and bake it. And that's how easy it is, and you're going to love it. So I'll see you in a bit. Our bread dough has been resting for 2 hours, and this is what it looks like. It's bubbly and jiggly. It's exactly what we want it to look like. So I'm going to dump it out on a lightly floured surface. Have a little bit of flour here. Flour my spatula, and we'll scoop this out. Onto that flour, set the bowl aside. I'm not really going to knead it. I'm just going to fold it together a little bit, put some flour on the top, and just bring it in 5 or 6 times on itself, and it's going to make a bowl, a nice round piece. And I'm going to let that set while I heat up my oven, and I have to also heat up my Dutch oven. So this is a Dutch oven. It's very big and heavy, has a heavy lid, and you want to use something that's really heavy like this to bake your bread in. If you don't have this, but you have a heavy pan that's oven safe, you can use that. But this has to heat up in the oven at 425 for a half an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in my oven now and preheat it. to 425. We're gonna let this dough rest just until the oven is preheated, and then we're gonna go ahead and put it in to bake. Our Dutch oven has been heating in our oven at 425 for about 30 minutes. I'm gonna bring it out and get the bread ready to go in it. Super hot, so be very careful. I'm going to scooch my bread onto this piece of parchment paper, keeping it in a nice round. I'm going to put a little extra parchment paper in the bottom of my Dutch oven just to protect the bottom of the bread. It's not necessary, it's just something that I like to do. Then I'm going to take my bread, opposite corners, stick it right in that oven, put the lid on, and put it in the oven at 425. We're gonna bake that for 30 minutes about, and then we're gonna take the lid off and bake it for a little bit more to make sure it gets nice and golden brown. Our 30-minute timer is going off, so we're going to go ahead and take the lid off of our Dutch oven. It's looking good. We're going to leave it in for another 10 or 15 minutes. And that will get that crust nice and gold. Our bread has been baking for 13 minutes uncovered at 425 after the initial 30 minutes covered. Let's take a look at it. I'm gonna pop it out, maybe. There we go. That is some good looking bread. And it can be our little secret that you spent most of the time while this bread was baking and doing its thing in the recliner reading your favorite book. It's gonna look like you spent hours working on it. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. The directions, as with all of our recipes, will be in the descriptions. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down below, and we'll see you next time on Baking Bakers.